From the Gulf States newsroom, this is the Gulf States Gumbo, your weekly serving of stories from Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. I'm economic mobility reporter Stephen Basaha, chopping it up this week. On today's show, there's a shortage of sexual assault nurse examiners in the Gulf South. This can impact both patient care and potential legal outcomes for their cases.
I know in some of our hospitals have tried to send patients away, or we don't do that here. We don't have a saying here.
And in Louisiana, there's more than one way to say alligator.
Un alligator, un crocodile.
Which one do you like more?
Crocodile.
There's a shortage of specialized nurses who play a critical role in providing care to sexual assault survivors, particularly in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. They're called sexual assault nurse examiners, or SANEs. As our health equity reporter Drew Hawkins reports, one potential solution is to use telemedicine, but it's currently not available in the Gulf South.
Shalata Sharp zooms into emergency rooms and guides nurses as they collect evidence for a SAFE kit, what used to be called a rape kit.
And Rebecca, is that correct? Is that your name, Rebecca? And you're the nurse there in the room?
Yes.
She's in Mississippi talking through a computer to another nurse, Rebecca Havlick, who's a SANE at Hearts of Hope, a sexual trauma center in Lafayette, Louisiana. And they're reenacting what a patient might hear.
So based on what you've told me, and Rebecca, what we can do is we can do what's called a medical forensic exam.
This isn't a real forensic exam, but Sharp is a real telesane. She just can't do it in Louisiana, Alabama, or in Mississippi, where she works, a state with only 7 certified SANEs. She says there aren't enough SANEs in hospitals in the Gulf South, which means some sexual assault survivors may have trouble getting a forensic exam, which can make it harder to prosecute their case.
I know in some of our hospitals have tried to send patients away, or we don't do that here. We don't have a saying here.
Sharp works in places like Pennsylvania and Arkansas because there are no telesane programs in the Gulf South. But some advocates say there should be.
Right, and what we see now is it's who in the ER has done a kit before? Who wants to do it?
Kimberly Young runs Hearts of Hope. That's where nurse Rebecca Havlick works as a SANE. She says most ER nurses aren't able to provide the care sexual assault patients need.
You're dealing with trauma. You need people like Shalata, Rebecca, Jency in that room who are trauma-informed and know how to handle trauma. So I think there's a lot that can be offered through telesanes.
The idea of telesanes isn't new, but in order to have them, you need state funding and support, and hospital buy-in to convince health systems that telesanes are possible and would benefit patients who have been sexually assaulted.
It eliminates that need to transport patients, outside their community, unless they choose that.
Sherry Cersei Lyle helped launch the telesane program in Arkansas. She says before there were only 4 certified SANEs in the state, and she was able to convince health systems there to use existing telemedicine technology and infrastructure that was already in place.
I know that we've made an impact on making things happen for patients that would not have happened without telesane.
But not all nurses believe telemedicine is the solution to the problem of not having enough SANEs.
And that is the comparison, nothing or this.
Michelle Mahon is with National Nurses United, the largest nursing union in the country.
Nothing is unacceptable. But why are we not demanding what patients need?
Telesanes may seem like a patch to cover the shortage of SANEs in the Gulf South, but Mahon says telehealth can't replace the in-person care that's vital, especially for survivors of sexual assault. But for hospitals, it's cheaper to hire one telesane than hiring or training more SANEs to have on staff.
And just having one of them instead of having the infrastructure to provide safe, competent, and effective care in every place. So definitely money is a big element of this.
There are some free programs in the Gulf South to train more SANE nurses, but they may have to take time off work and pay for hotels and food and other things like childcare arrangements. And nurses like Rebecca Havlick at Hearts of Hope in Louisiana feel like a telesane program could help patients.
I personally love telemedicine. It allows me to see a lot more patients. It allows me to reach patients that otherwise would not be able to get to me. It is more convenient, meaning they will get the care that they need instead of delaying it because they can't get to me.
The Louisiana Hospital Association and representatives at Ochsner, one of the largest private health systems in the Gulf South, say they aren't aware of any plans to implement telesane programs. So for now, many sexual assault survivors who go to a hospital that doesn't have a sane may have to go to another facility that does if they want to get a forensic exam. For the Gulf States Newsroom, I'm Drew Hawkins.
You're listening to the Gulf States Gumbo. I'm Stephen Basaha. The latest inflation numbers released this week show food prices rose just under 3% in December compared to the previous year. That includes eggs, ground beef, and pasta. But there is at least one treat in your grocery cart that got cheaper.
Do you have chocolate chip cookies?
That's right. Store-bought chocolate chip cookie prices are down in the South.
Oh, okay. Can I have a half dozen of them?
And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're down by a lot.
Oh my gosh, 17% drop.
Sarah Helmans-McCarthy is an economist at Samford University. But she says that 17% drop is not the full story.
It looks like we have this wild fire sale of cookies in the South, but that's not quite what's happening in the market.
Instead, if you compare to, say, 4 years ago, cookie prices have skyrocketed. They're still about $1 more per pound compared to back then, possibly due to higher egg and chocolate prices. But hey, cookies are still cheaper than a year ago. Good news for the wallet, just maybe not for that New Year's resolution.
The Gulf States Newsroom is a team of journalists working with NPR and local public media stations in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana to cover the issues that matter to you. Email us, connect@gulfstatesnewsroom.org.
Louisiana has a long history with the French language. And while most Louisianians no longer speak it, a growing number want their kids to learn. The question is, what kind of French? WWNO's Aubrey Uhas takes us to a school down the bayou that's taking a novel approach by teaching students to talk like their grandparents.
Inside a small school up on stilts, a few girls are sitting at a table covered with flashcards.
Je m'appelle Juliette. Je m'appelle Lana.
Juliette and Lana are in the second grade at a new public French immersion school, École Pointe-Chene. The cards are for words that have multiple French translations in Louisiana. Can you tell me both ways to say alligator?
Un alligator, un crocodile.
Which one do you like more?
Crocodile.
Crocodile? That's the Cajun word. It's actually pronounced cocodrie. And there's another way people who speak French in Terrebonne and Lafourche might say alligator. Cayman. It's a native word. Juliette and Lana's parents don't speak French, but like most of their classmates, they have an older family member who does. Most people used to speak French in Pointe-Chene and in Louisiana, dating back to when it was a French colony.
The way you speak tells people about who you are.
Natalie Dyko teaches linguistics and anthropology at Tulane. She says before the Civil War, there were at least 4 kinds of French in the state.
We have the French that is spoken by these people who came directly from France.
Both standard and non-standard French.
We have a bunch of Acadians who've now shown up, speaking something very similar, but nonetheless distinct.
The Acadians were descendants of French settlers who got kicked out of what is today Canada. Some ended up in Louisiana and ended up speaking what's known as Cajun French.
And we have a variety of restructured French that's been created by enslaved Africans.
Creole. Native people also started speaking French, and those dialects all mixed after the war. In the 1920s, in an attempt to Americanize the South, lawmakers made English the state's official language and prohibited French in schools. The ban was in place until the 1970s. Dyko says by then, English was here to stay.
You don't have to punish somebody to tell them that their language is not valuable. You just have to not use it.
Because Native communities were initially kept out of public schools, Dyko says they held on to their French for longer. Christine Verdun is in her 60s and grew up speaking what she calls Indian French, as a member of the Pointe-au-Chien tribe.
We all spoke French. That's the only way not to lose it.
She's the director of École Pointe-au-Chien. The school was started by the tribe and other residents after the local school board closed the town's elementary school due to low enrollment. Verdun says for those who have stayed, French is still a big part of the culture.
Indian French, Cajun French. We don't have any Creoles here, but we're not opposed.
She says at first, some tribe members wanted the kids at the school to only learn native words.
And I had to say, we can't do that.
Yes, the school is about preserving Indian and Cajun culture, she says. But French is also a tool that can take kids places. And if you don't learn standard French, you miss part of the benefit.
But you bring in our French too, because when they go home and speak to their grandparents are not going to know a citron is a jurimont, which is a pumpkin.
Acknowledging these differences and that both words are right is what makes the school unique. It's the first like it in the state, and possibly the first to teach native French in the country. Right now, it offers grades pre-K through 2nd and plans to grow to at least the 5th grade. The school's older kids spend more than half of the day learning in French, while pre-K students are taught entirely in French. In Camille Revier's class, her 4-year-olds are working on a math worksheet, counting boxes and drawing a line to the correct number.
Oui. Alors, vas-y, fais un trait.
At lunch, a teacher makes small talk with older kids in French by asking them questions about what they're eating.
Un seul dinosaure? Non. Bah compte, il y en a combien?
I'm eating a puzzle piece.
Dyko, the Tulane professor, says people have long predicted the demise of Louisiana French. But it keeps surviving.
So I'm not going to predict anything, but I think there's a lot of hope these days in younger generations who are choosing to speak to their children in French at home, who are sending them to French immersion schools, who are excited about speaking French.
In all its many varieties. In Pointe-au-Chien, I'm Aubrey Juhas.
And now it's time for Gulf States Gems, a series that shines a light on some of the treasures of the region. Here's environmental justice reporter Danny MacArthur with this week's gem from Tupelo, Mississippi.
Mount Fuji is a really special place for my wife Ashley and me. It was the first restaurant we ate at when I was moving to Tupelo, Mississippi in 2019. A hibachi restaurant is probably not the first thing you'd expect to find here, but it's one of the best spots in town. Ashley and I love watching the chefs cook our food, and then we get to eat it fresh from the grill. My go-to order was personally the vegetable hibachi, but you can't go wrong with any of the options. We went so often that the owner would recognize us during some of our visits. We'd also spend every Christmas eating there. Even though we've since moved, it's still a key memory of Tupelo for me. And it's a true gem because I can't picture the city without thinking of that hibachi.
You can see pictures of Mount Fuji and other Gulf States gems from across the region on our Instagram. And we want to hear about a place you consider a gem. It could be a library, a hole-in-the-wall restaurant. Maybe it's a place, just kick up your feet. Send us your suggestion. Email us at connect@gulfstatesnewsroom.org. This week's Gulf States Gumbo was produced by me, Stephen Basaha. Our head chef this week is Tyler Pratt. Our theme music is by DJ Supreme. Special thanks to our partner stations, WBHM, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, WWNO, and WRKF. You can find us in your podcast feeds every Friday. Look us up and be sure to subscribe. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to stir your roux.